I can't believe I'm doing this. This city is chock full of heroes who can stop this clown. Official heroes, licensed heroes, grade A, government-approved heroes. But when it comes down to it, I'm the one who's here, right now. Today on the Comic Book Report, The Amazing Spider-Man, Brand New Day, Volume 1. Stick around and check it out. Greetings, webheads. My name is Dominic, and you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today, I'm kicking off the Slott Spider-Man run with The Amazing Spider-Man, Brand New Day, Volume 1. This run picks up right after the JMS Spider-Man era, and it's a fresh status quo for our favorite wall crawler. So sit back, relax, and let's go ahead and dive into today's review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Dan Slott and penciled primarily by Steve McNiven. The issues collected were first published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2008. The volume itself collects The Amazing Spider-Man issues 546 through 551, Spider-Man Swing Shift, and material from Venom Super Special Number 1. This standard size hardcover comes in at 200 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a brief spoiler warning. I will be flipping through today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that standard-sized hardcover. This is The Amazing Spider-Man, Brand New Day, Volume 1. And I have to say that this is a really fun little edition. It's a standard-sized hardcover with nice glossy print pages, and it's still part of that Marvel Premiere Edition line. We don't see those anymore today, but they were nice, well-bound little hardcover editions, and this one is no different. Across the front and back covers, you're treated to some sampling of the interior artwork of this book, and overall, this is a fun start. Now I wanted to go ahead and take a moment to take a closer look at that dust jacket for this volume, and after that we'll go ahead and take a look at the Under the Dust Jacket actual hardbound edition itself, so you can know what to expect should you pick up some of these old hardcovers. I should note as well, at the time of the recording, Marvel has announced a Spider-Man Brand New Day Omnibus that should collect these issues along with quite a bit more, so if you like what you see in the review today, maybe keep your eye out for that omnibus coming next year. And with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into today's collection. As I mentioned at the top, this takes place directly after the J.M. Straczynski Spider-Man run, so if you have those two omnibuses or have read that run in the past, this will come end to end with that. As we know, at the end of that, it went through Civil War and the One More Day storyline, which kind of did a soft reboot retcon that reset Spider-Man back to a new norm. No one knows his secret identity, he's no longer married or even romantically involved with Mary Jane Watson, and he's kind of back in New York. He's living with Aunt May, down on his luck, that old Parker luck, and trying to find his way in the world. He doesn't have any memory of what the other timeline life was up until a certain point. He never married Mary Jane, any of that. So it's kind of like New 52, if you've read that DC era, where they kind of picked and chose the parts of the continuity they wanted to keep and muddled and changed some of the other details to kind of effectively refresh and create a really solid entry point for new readers. And while I've dabbled in Dan Slott's Spider-Man run, this man wrote on Spider-Man for, I believe, over a decade, so this is the very beginning to a very long run. As far as the plot goes, like I said, it's really about establishing that new normal for Peter Parker's Spider-Man. We have Peter down on his luck, trying to find a better place to live, trying to find work. We have J. Jonah Jameson early on having a heart attack, the Daily Bugle being sold, and we basically have Peter Parker still trying to sell photos to the new Bugle, but also trying to find his way, maybe try to find new work. This is also in the wake of the Marvel Civil War, and Spider-Man's considered an outlaw superhero. When the story picks up, he hasn't been practicing as a superhero in some time, but he kind of effectively goes back into action throughout this volume. But we also have a Spider-Man mugger who, in his absence, has kind of taken the Spider-Man mask and has robbed people. So the public opinion of Spider-Man is not super great, and now he's even more of a vigilante outlaw who will get stopped on the spot should he start practicing crime fighting. This volume also introduces a registered superhero named Jackpot, who looks suspiciously like Mary Jane Watson, who apparently is not Mary Jane Watson. She kind of has the territory in New York area where Spider-Man practices and definitely overlaps with him a little bit, but she's a total rookie hero who kind of looks up to Spider-Man. Spider-Man tries to discourage her a few times from being a superhero before kind of reluctantly taking her under his wing and kind of teaming up with her a little bit. This book is also really notable for introducing Mr. Negative, the villain that, is more predominant these days. We also have the introduction of a new goblin-like villain, Menace. I'm not clear on how often he shows up in the comic continuity these days. I'm definitely less familiar with him compared to Mr. Negative. And that actually brings me to another positive for this collection. If anyone's a fan of the Spider-Man PS4, PS5 games, there's a lot of that game that seems to be directly influenced by this book here, as far as Mr. Negative, kind of some of his plot lines and what he tries to do. And so I was really fascinated, having read this years and years ago, forgetting about it, beating that Spider-Man video game and then reading this again with new eyes. I find myself liking it so much more, tying it into that video game, and even just on its own merits. This was only my second time reading this volume, but it was much better than my first impression of it all those years ago. I think knowing now that this is a fresh take on the character, a brand new start to a long run, and kind of a reset, when I had that mentality and was able to accept this as just a completely isolated fresh start, I was much more accommodating to what Slott established here, and I really enjoyed my read through this time around. Switching from the plot to the artwork, I have to say that a lot of the art here was done by McNiven, and while these aren't my favorite pencils I've seen him do, this was still some fantastically strong art, and it was really consistent throughout the whole volume. It really depicts a really great New York City, in my opinion. The character models of Spider-Man are fantastic throughout. Really enjoyed it. I think that all the characters' faces and features looked very distinctive, and I really like that in an artist, especially for Spider-Man. I know sometimes you'll have artists that a lot of the faces look similar, and I felt like this was maybe not that. I felt like there was a lot of character in the design work, a lot of rich detail with not just the character work, but with the backgrounds and settings and sense of place and location, and it really set it apart for me. A really great, solid piece of work on that end. I will say as well, it was kind of funny to me to read a comic where he's considered even more of an outlaw. In general, the public perception, it's kind of mixed, but he's largely regarded, especially by the Daily Bugle, as a menace and a vigilante. But now that it's somehow even more illegal and even more sketchy, we have him even more on the outs and even more down on his luck, and it kind of magnifies what's already in a lot of the Spider-Man mythos, and I think to great effect. We get a lot of sense of stakes and kind of motivations and character conflict, and I think that is such rich ground for good storytelling in general, but especially in a Peter Parker Spider-Man story. And it's a really good baseline for everything that Slott will build from this point on. Another really big highlight for me was what I mentioned earlier, the Jackpot character and her relationship with Spider-Man professionally. I think the kind of teacher-mentor relationship, the kind of weird chemistry where he kind of wonders if it's Mary Jane and all the baggage there. It's just a really interesting juxtaposition when you look at those characters and that dynamic, and there's a lot of tragedy. By the end of this volume, I feel so bad for Jackpot, and I feel so kind of you feel the weight of superheroics all the more, all over again. You get to see, Spider-Man tried to warn her to get out while she still could, and then someone kind of dies, and the blood is more or less on her hands in some ways, and there's such a sense of gravity there. And I think that that was done so well, and I know that once I finish this volume, I'm so eager to see what Slott does with that character of Jackpot, and with this new version of Spider-Man. It can be hard to evaluate Spider-Man with any level of objectivity when there's so many classics in his history, but I think that you could do a lot worse than Brand New Day. I'm curious, have you read any of the Dan Slott Spider-Man run? Let me know in the comments below. And as we reach the end of today's collection, I think it's only fair that we give Spider-Man Brand New Day a grade. For its gorgeous, realistic-looking pencils, vibrant color palette, and strong foundational storytelling, The Comic Book Report gives The Amazing Spider-Man Brand New Day Volume 1 a B. I would say that this story is a bit above average, a great start and a great set of character introductions, from Jackpot to Mr. Negative and beyond. Slott really understands the voice of both Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and sets up a really good on-ramp for new readers. Check out Brand New Day. Until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment and check out some of my other videos. Have a good one.